For centuries, the moon has been the silent companion of our planet, orbiting steadily above us, influencing our tides, our calendars, and even our myths. Poets have called it a lantern of the night sky, scientists have measured its craters and rocks, and dreamers have wondered if perhaps someone, or something, was already up there, watching us back. But in the mid-20th century, when mankind finally launched rockets powerful enough to pierce the atmosphere and reach this familiar neighbor, something unexpected began to surface. The moon was not as dead, not as empty, and not as natural as we had been told. At least, that is what some of the most bizarre and suppressed documents claim. Strange structures, perfectly geometric shadows, and whispers of bases hidden far beyond the reach of telescopes on Earth, tucked away on the mysterious far side of the moon, the side we never see. The story begins not with NASA, but with Nikola Tesla. In the early 1900s, Tesla shocked the scientific world by claiming he had intercepted signals from outer space, repeating pulses that, in his mind, were not natural at all. He believed he was picking up intelligent communication, and though his peers mocked him, Tesla insisted that the signals came from either Mars, Venus, or the moon. Decades later, researchers would look back at those claims with renewed curiosity. Was Tesla, with his giant Colorado Springs coils, tapping into something more than random radio interference? Could his wireless energy experiments have detected transmissions from an artificial station on the lunar surface? And if so, what was sending them? Fast forward to 1969, when Apollo 11 touched down in the Sea of Tranquility and humanity set foot on the moon for the first time. Neil Armstrong's words echoed across the globe: "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." But what the cameras broadcast to Earth was only part of the story. According to leaked transcripts and alleged insider accounts, moments of the astronauts' communications were cut off, replaced by technical difficulties. Amateur radio operators at the time, however, claimed to have intercepted raw transmissions, in which Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin described seeing lights on the rim of a nearby crater. Rumors spread that Apollo astronauts witnessed structures, towers, domes, and even moving objects that did not belong on a lifeless rock. NASA, of course, dismissed these as myths, technical glitches, or overactive imaginations. But if nothing was there, why did astronauts so often speak in vague terms, hinting at things they couldn't talk about in public? Consider the words of Apollo 14 astronaut Edgar Mitchell, who later confessed in interviews that he believed in extraterrestrial presence and that governments knew more than they admitted. Or Apollo 11's Buzz Aldrin, who once cryptically said, "There is a monolith on Phobos, a moon of Mars. We should go explore it." Why would an astronaut speak so casually about an alien-like structure unless he had seen something out there that forever shifted his perspective? And then there are the photographs. The Apollo missions took thousands of high-resolution images of the moon, many of which were later released to the public. But anomalies crept in, shapes that did not look like random rocks or shadows. Researchers pointed to strange glass-like towers rising kilometers above the surface, massive dome-like structures shattered over time, and angular buildings that seemed too precise to be natural formations. NASA brushed these off as tricks of light and shadow, or flaws in film development. Yet the controversy persisted, especially when whistleblowers claimed that entire reels of lunar photographs had been classified, altered, or destroyed. But perhaps the greatest mystery lies in the far side of the moon, the hemisphere forever turned away from Earth. We only saw it for the first time in 1959, when the Soviet Luna 3 probe sent back blurry images. Later, Apollo orbiters mapped it more thoroughly, revealing a landscape unlike the near side: far more craters, fewer maria, and an eerie sense of untouched isolation. It was here, conspiracy theorists say, that structures were most likely to be hidden. Artificial bases, shielded from human eyes. And perhaps, just perhaps, still active. Now, where does Tesla fit into all of this? Some researchers believe Tesla's vision of wireless energy was not just a dream of free electricity for humanity. They argue that he was inspired, perhaps even guided, by knowledge of a greater system. Imagine this: an ancient energy grid stretching across planets, using the moon as a relay station, transmitting power through resonant frequencies. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, which he tried to build in New York, might have been the first human attempt to replicate this system. But if Tesla had tapped into signals from a lunar base, it would explain his unshakable conviction that he was on the verge of unlocking limitless, wireless power. And it would also explain why, after his death, much of his research was seized by the US government, locked away in classified archives. The connections don't end there. In the 1990s, former Defense Intelligence Agency employees leaked reports of structures on the moon. More recently, Chinese lunar missions have captured images that online sleuths claim show artificial-looking objects, cubes, towers, even tracks. NASA itself published an image in 2014 of a strange, cubic rock on the far side, which Chinese scientists later called the mystery hut. They claimed it was just a rock shaped by chance. But to those who already believed, it was further proof that something was being hidden in plain sight. The question that lingers is why the secrecy? If structures exist on the moon, if artificial bases were truly discovered by astronauts, why would this knowledge be withheld from the public? One explanation is simple: fear. Fear of destabilizing religion, governments, or the very structure of society. Another explanation is strategic. If alien technology exists on the moon, the first nation to harness it would hold unimaginable power. And in that game, secrecy is the most valuable currency. As we step into this mystery, we're left with tantalizing pieces. Tesla's intercepted signals. Apollo's missing minutes. Photos of towers and domes. Whistleblowers speaking in whispers. A far side we rarely see. All of it paints a picture that is less about a barren rock and more about a stage, one on which a hidden story has been unfolding for centuries. And so, the real question we must ask is not whether there is a base on the moon. The question is, who built it, and why? The years following Apollo 11 were filled with triumphs, mysteries, and unanswered questions. The world celebrated mankind's first steps on the moon, yet behind the smiling photographs and televised glory, a darker narrative was brewing. Each successive Apollo mission returned with more samples, more data, and more whispered stories of things the astronauts could not, or would not, speak about openly. It was during Apollo 12, Apollo 14, and most famously Apollo 16 and 17 that rumors began to spread about anomalous encounters. Silent moments in radio transmissions, cryptic language used by astronauts, and sudden cuts in live feeds fueled suspicions that NASA was concealing far more than it was revealing. Apollo 17, the final manned mission in 1972, is particularly interesting. It was commanded by Eugene Cernan, with Harrison Schmitt and Ronald Evans as crew. Cernan, years later, would reflect on his belief that humanity was not alone in the universe. He stopped short of admitting exactly what he saw, but many researchers point to declassified mission logs and photographs showing unexplained light sources on the horizon, as though glowing orbs were monitoring the astronauts. Others claimed that Schmitt, a trained geologist, noticed structures resembling artificial walls or domes half buried in lunar dust. These accounts, while never officially confirmed, fit into the growing legend that Apollo missions had stumbled upon evidence of advanced presence on the moon. Parallel to these events, whispers of Tesla's long-forgotten notes began to resurface. After his death in 1943, Tesla's Manhattan hotel room was raided by agents of the Office of Alien Property Custodian. Dozens of trunks filled with blueprints, notebooks, and unpublished theories were seized. The official story claimed they were inventors' curiosities, many impractical or unfinished. But among the papers were said to be sketches and formulas describing a cosmic communication system, using resonance and frequency to reach distant points in space. Some accounts even describe Tesla noting lunar nodes, points on the moon's surface that could serve as natural amplifiers for energy transmission. These were not idle fantasies. Tesla firmly believed the Earth and Moon were part of a greater electromagnetic circuit, one that could be tapped into for infinite energy. Now here's where things become deeply unsettling. Reports from Apollo missions mention unnatural radio frequencies detected near certain craters. The astronauts themselves could not explain these anomalies. Scientists dismissed them as atmospheric static or equipment interference, yet the locations of these signals often coincided with places where photographs later showed unusual shapes. Could Tesla's lunar nodes have been real? And were the Apollo astronauts, knowingly or unknowingly, brushing against the same cosmic energy Tesla had described decades earlier? By the mid-1970s, after Apollo ended, NASA quietly abandoned further manned lunar exploration. Officially, the reasons were cost, risk, and shifting focus toward the space shuttle. But for conspiracy researchers, the decision looked more like retreat than budgetary caution. Why would humanity step away from its greatest achievement so suddenly? Unless, of course, something had been discovered that was too dangerous, too provocative, or too uncontrollable to reveal. It is around this same period that another layer of secrecy emerged: government black projects. The CIA and Department of Defense invested heavily in programs exploring remote viewing, psychic espionage, and advanced propulsion theories. Strangely enough, some of the documents now declassified under FOIA requests reveal an obsessive interest in the moon. Why would intelligence agencies care about mapping or psychically probing the lunar surface unless there was something there worth hiding? Even more fascinating, some of these reports reference Tesla directly, quoting his theories of resonance and energy as potential applications for communication with off-world structures. Then, in the late 20th century, the whispers grew louder. Former contractors, engineers, and even supposed NASA insiders began to leak claims of lunar anomalies. One engineer, Ken Johnston, alleged that original Apollo photographs were altered before being released to the public. He claimed he'd personally handled images showing massive glass-like towers and dome structures, but when they were made public, these features had been airbrushed away. Johnston was dismissed by NASA, branded a fantasist, but his testimony remains part of the growing collection of voices insisting the moon is not what it seems. Tesla's role in this mystery becomes even stranger when one considers the timing. In the 1890s, Tesla built massive coils designed to transmit energy wirelessly. At Colorado Springs, he generated bolts of electricity so powerful they lit up the night sky. During those experiments, he claimed to have intercepted signals, simple repeating numbers, that he insisted were intelligent. To the public, Tesla described them as possible Martian signals, but privately he told confidants he was not sure where they came from. Could they have originated from a lunar relay station? A beacon, perhaps, left behind by an advanced race or by a secret civilization that once occupied Earth. Consider also Tesla's obsession with numbers, specifically 3, 6, and 9, which he described as the key to the universe. These numbers resonate with harmonic frequencies used in modern communications and, intriguingly, align with measurements of lunar cycles and orbital ratios. Was Tesla, unknowingly or deliberately, unlocking a code that connected Earth's electromagnetic field to something embedded on the moon? And if so, did his premature death prevent him from revealing the full truth? By the 1980s, the legend of hidden lunar bases had grown beyond whispers. Popular authors and researchers began publishing books claiming that the moon itself might be an artificial satellite, a hollowed-out construct placed in orbit eons ago. The Soviet space program, too, had its own oddities. Soviet scientists noticed strange seismic readings when lunar modules crashed into the moon. The impact caused the moon to ring like a bell for hours, suggesting it was not a solid natural body, but something hollow inside, something constructed. NASA confirmed the data but offered natural explanations, saying the lunar composition simply allowed vibrations to carry unusually far. Still, to those already suspicious, the ringing moon was proof of a hidden, artificial core. Now, imagine if Tesla's intercepted signals, Apollo's secret encounters, and the moon's strange acoustics are all connected. What if the moon is not simply a rock but a massive station, designed as both a watchtower and a transmitter? A base that predates humanity, repurposed by governments, and perhaps even still active today. That possibility reframes the entire lunar program, transforming it from exploration into reconnaissance of a structure far older and more mysterious than we dare admit. The deeper we go, the more the puzzle seems to point toward deliberate concealment. Tesla's notes vanish into classified vaults. Apollo ends just as strange discoveries accumulate. Photographs are altered. Astronauts hint at truths they never fully confess. And modern missions focus almost exclusively on satellites and robotic probes, rarely sending humans back. One must ask, what is being hidden, and why are we kept in the dark? As we reach the midpoint of this investigation, one thing becomes clear: Nikola Tesla, long dismissed as a dreamer, may have been the first human to truly sense that the moon was more than it appeared. His intercepted signals, his theories of resonance, his vision of an interconnected energy grid, they all aligned too neatly with what Apollo astronauts later experienced and what modern whistleblowers claim. The question is no longer whether there is something hidden on the moon. The question now becomes, are we prepared to face the truth that Tesla tried to warn us about? By the early 1970s, when Apollo missions abruptly ended, the space race seemed over. The United States had won, planting the stars and stripes on the lunar surface. But behind the champagne toasts and political speeches, both NASA and the Soviet Union were quietly grappling with something far more complex. Evidence suggesting the moon was not simply a barren rock, but home to unexplained anomalies that defied natural explanation. Publicly, the narrative was clear: budget cuts, political fatigue, and shifting priorities spelled the end of manned lunar exploration. Privately, however, memos exchanged between NASA and defense contractors hint at a different story. Certain Apollo sites had recorded powerful magnetic anomalies, strange radio frequencies, and photographs of geometric patterns on the far side of the moon. These were anomalies that science could not dismiss, and so they were classified. The Cold War was raging, and the idea that the Soviets might also stumble upon something alien, or worse, weaponize it, was intolerable. Thus began a shadow war not for the conquest of the moon, but for control over its secrets. In Moscow, Soviet scientists were equally perplexed by their lunar missions. The Luna probes and later Lunokhod rovers returned images of strange reflective objects. More troubling were seismic data collected from impacts, data showing that when Soviet modules struck the moon, it vibrated for hours, ringing like a bell. This was no poetic exaggeration. The Soviet Academy of Sciences published cautious reports on the phenomenon, speculating that the moon might be partially hollow. Western intelligence immediately flagged these reports, noting how eerily they mirrored Tesla's old claims about resonance and energy transfer. Some researchers believe that by the late 1970s, a secret backchannel of cooperation opened between the US and USSR. Despite their rivalry, both sides understood the implications. If the moon contained artificial structures, then humanity was dealing with something far beyond politics. Evidence supporting this theory comes from declassified CIA cables, which reference shared technical anomalies and joint security considerations during lunar data exchanges. Why would Cold War enemies ever share lunar findings, unless those findings threatened both superpowers equally? By the 1980s, whispers of a base on the far side of the moon began to circulate. Amateur radio operators claimed to intercept strange signals during Apollo communications blackouts. Some alleged that the astronauts switched to a secure frequency to report sightings of lights and craft on the horizon. Others claimed that Soviet cosmonauts, during orbital flybys, recorded massive rectangular shadows stretching across craters, shadows too straight, too geometric to be natural. And then came the strangest connection of all: Nikola Tesla. For decades, his confiscated papers sat locked away in government vaults, dismissed as eccentric ramblings. But during the height of Cold War secrecy, aerospace engineers allegedly revisited Tesla's notes on resonance, wireless energy, and cosmic communication. Why? Because they matched, almost perfectly, the frequencies detected near lunar anomalies. Tesla had written in 1901 that the Earth is a conductor of sound and frequency, linked to the moon in harmonic resonance. To most, it was metaphor. But to those in classified programs, it was a blueprint. Evidence suggests both the US and USSR launched secret satellite programs during this era, not to study the moon's geology, but to map its electromagnetic field. This was never revealed to the public, but some data eventually leaked. Certain regions of the moon, particularly near the South Pole Aitken Basin and Mare Imbrium, emitted strange electromagnetic surges that no natural process could explain. Tesla's theories suddenly looked prophetic, as though he had glimpsed a hidden architecture of the moon long before humanity had even set foot there. But perhaps the most shocking testimony emerged not from scientists, but from whistleblowers. In 1994, a former defense contractor using the alias John claimed he had been shown classified Apollo photographs during his time working at a subcontractor facility. These images, he said, depicted massive towers, glass-like and miles high, rising out of the lunar surface. Others showed what appeared to be hexagonal domes, partially buried in dust. John described one photograph in chilling detail: a dark rectangular entrance carved into a crater wall, large enough for spacecraft to pass through. He insisted these images were airbrushed before being released to the public, a claim echoed by Ken Johnston, the former NASA employee dismissed for making similar allegations. By the late 1990s, the secrecy deepened. Military satellites were allegedly redirected to scan the moon's far side, while civilian space programs were fed sanitized data. What leaked out, however, was enough to keep the conspiracy alive. For instance, Clementine, a joint mission between the U.S. Air Force and NASA in 1994, was officially described as a mapping mission. Yet insiders claimed its true purpose was to photograph and analyze lunar anomalies. Within months of completing its mission, most of Clementine's raw data vanished from public access, raising questions about what had been discovered. Tesla's ghost continued to haunt these revelations. His obsession with resonance, his intercepted signals, his dream of transmitting limitless energy, all of it seemed to converge on one unsettling possibility: the moon itself was part of a vast, ancient energy network. Some theorists argue that Tesla's cosmic communication system may have been inspired by fragments of knowledge he stumbled upon, knowledge that linked directly to the structures now rumored to exist on the moon. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union collapsed, and with it, many of its secrets spilled into the open. Retired cosmonauts hinted at strange encounters, including lights that seemed to follow their crafts, and signals they could not trace to any known source. One Soviet scientist went so far as to state publicly that the moon may be an ancient observational post, though his comments were quickly dismissed as metaphorical. But to those who study the patterns, the pieces fit too neatly. Tesla's resonance codes, Apollo's missing minutes, Soviet seismic data, and leaked photographs all point to one conclusion: there is something on the moon that someone does not want us to see. And here lies the chilling irony. While the public believed the space race ended in 1969 with a flag and a plaque, the real race had just begun. A secret competition not for glory, but for control over a hidden technology buried on our closest celestial neighbor. Tesla had once said, "If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." It seems both superpowers took his advice, but instead of sharing the discovery with the world, they buried it under layers of classification. The Cold War may have ended, but the mystery of the moon's hidden base remains unsolved. Why was Apollo truly cancelled? Why did the Soviets remain silent about their most anomalous findings? And most importantly, was Tesla's resonance theory the key to unlocking a technology that humanity is still not ready to face? By the dawn of the 21st century, humanity's gaze once again turned to the moon, but this time with a different urgency. Publicly, nations announced renewed interest in lunar exploration for resources, science, and national pride. Privately, whispers circulated that modern technology, satellite imaging, deep penetrating radar, and quantum resonance sensors, had revealed far more than governments were willing to admit. The Chinese Chang'e missions, beginning in 2007, photographed vast portions of the lunar surface in stunning detail, yet many of the most intriguing images never appeared in the official releases. In leaked forums and obscure scientific circles, stories emerged of structures, angular, geometric, and metallic, seen in raw data before being scrubbed from the public archives. One particular claim described a hexagonal complex on the far side of the moon, aligned perfectly with Earth's magnetic poles, as though deliberately positioned to interact with planetary frequencies. What startled researchers most was how these alignments mirrored Tesla's resonance maps, drawn decades before the first lunar orbiter ever left Earth. Meanwhile, NASA prepared the Artemis program, promising to return humans to the moon. But insiders claimed Artemis had a second, undisclosed purpose: to investigate anomalies first recorded during Apollo and Clementine. In late 2019, an alleged leak surfaced from within a European Space Agency partner, suggesting that Artemis landing sites were carefully chosen not for safety or resources, but for proximity to high-energy nodes. These nodes corresponded not only with unusual magnetic readings but with locations Tesla himself had identified in his resonance theories. Suddenly, the connection between Tesla's forgotten work and the moon's hidden structures no longer seemed coincidental. It seemed intentional, as though Tesla had been following breadcrumbs left behind by something far older than humanity. In 2020, a report published briefly on a scientific database and removed within 24 hours, described non-natural metallic alloys detected in lunar regolith samples. The composition of these alloys matched no known terrestrial process, leading some to suspect they were remnants of ancient construction, long buried beneath dust and meteor impacts. While mainstream scientists dismissed the leak as fabrication, those who had studied Tesla's theories of energy and vibration noticed the resonance signatures of these alloys. They behaved like conductors, amplifying electromagnetic fields far beyond their mass. Could it be that the structures on the Moon were not just shelters or outposts, but massive energy resonators, giant amplifiers designed to harness or project power across space? Then came the most unsettling series of claims. In early 2022, amateur astronomers reported strange flashes of light on the Moon's far side. At first dismissed as meteor impacts, the flashes repeated, always in the same locations, and always synchronized with unexplained surges in Earth's magnetic field. Independent researchers compared the data to Tesla's notes on resonance and concluded that the Moon and Earth were interacting like a vast tuning fork, one striking the other, sending ripples of energy across space. For decades, Tesla had been ridiculed for his obsession with vibration and frequency, yet here it was, physical evidence of a system operating on principles he had described over a century earlier. The Chinese Space Agency, for its part, released carefully worded statements about unusual formations on the far side, though official details were scarce. However, in obscure Chinese scientific journals, a handful of researchers dared to describe large, rectilinear structures consistent with artificial construction. Almost immediately, these papers were retracted, and their authors faded from public view. Some conspiracists argue that an unspoken global pact exists, an agreement among the major spacefaring nations to suppress any evidence that suggests the Moon is more than a lifeless rock. After all, if proof of ancient structures were revealed, the implications for religion, politics, and energy technology would be world-shattering. Who built them? Why? And most importantly, what still lies within? Yet Tesla's shadow looms largest. Among the declassified fragments of his notebooks is a cryptic sketch, a spherical Earth connected to a crescent moon by a series of waveforms. Next to it, Tesla scrawled a single phrase: "The circuit is incomplete." Some researchers believe Tesla was suggesting that Earth and the Moon were designed to work together as parts of a larger system, possibly an energy grid spanning planets. If this is true, then the artificial structures on the Moon may not be isolated, they may be nodes in a machine still humming beneath our feet. A machine humanity barely understands. Whistleblowers in the aerospace industry have claimed that prototypes inspired by Tesla's resonance theories were tested in classified labs, attempting to replicate the energy signatures detected near lunar anomalies. One anonymous engineer, using the alias Rex, claimed that in 2021 his team built a resonant coil array based on Tesla's notes and directed it toward the Moon. According to Rex, they received a signal back, a pulsed harmonic response as though something on the Moon was listening. The experiment was immediately classified, the data seized, and Rex allegedly threatened into silence. But fragments of his testimony continue to circulate online, fueling speculation that Tesla had not only understood the resonance link between Earth and the Moon but had also attempted to communicate with whatever was hidden there. By mid-2023, the situation grew even stranger. NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter detected unexplained heat signatures on the far side of the Moon, specifically near Shackleton Crater. Though attributed publicly to thermal anomalies, leaked internal reports described geometric patterns consistent with power distribution grids. Some analysts suggested these structures might still be active, drawing energy from solar radiation or even from the resonance of Earth itself. If Tesla had discovered this principle over a century ago, then perhaps he was not inventing something new but rediscovering a technology that had been in place for thousands, if not millions, of years. And so the question deepens: if the Moon hosts a hidden base, who built it? Was it the work of a lost human civilization, erased by time and catastrophe, as ancient myths of Atlantis and Lemuria suggest? Or was it placed there by an intelligence beyond our world, an observation post, an energy station, or a gateway to something even stranger? Tesla's writings point to both possibilities. In one of his last recorded notes, he wrote, "We are not alone in the system. We are but children who have stumbled into an ancient workshop." Whether he meant this metaphorically or literally remains unclear, but when paired with the mounting lunar anomalies, his words feel more prophetic than poetic. Today, as the Artemis program prepares to land astronauts on the lunar surface again, some insiders whisper that the true mission has nothing to do with exploration or colonization. It is, instead, about confirmation, proving once and for all what Tesla and others had suspected, that the moon is not a natural satellite, but a constructed object, an artifact waiting to be unlocked. If so, then humanity stands at the edge of a discovery so profound it could redefine our place in the universe. But with that discovery comes danger. For if Tesla was correct about resonance, then activating or disturbing the structures on the moon could unleash forces we are not prepared to control. And that is the haunting paradox. The moon, so familiar in our night sky, may be hiding secrets as old as time itself, secrets Tesla brushed against but never lived to reveal. As governments race in silence and corporations dream of lunar mining, the true prize lies not in resources but in knowledge. Knowledge forbidden, knowledge hidden, knowledge that might explain why humanity has always felt a strange pull toward the moon. Perhaps it is not just a satellite. Perhaps it is a machine. And perhaps, after centuries of slumber, it is waking up again.